Hey guys, so happy you are here. I am going to start to fill up your tool belt with skills and tools that will help you to improve your marriage and your life. So, funny thing that I've learned is that as I start teaching you the concepts and principles of life coaching, so often everyone that I teach and coach perceives that marriage and life is getting better because of situations and circumstances that have changed. So they will think it's because their spouse had a job change, or they had their spouse had a conversation with someone that they think that really helped their marriage, or for some reason they're feeling this inexplicable feeling of greater love between their spouse, and they can't quite put their finger on it. But I'm going to tell you straight out that the real reason is that they have started to alter the way they view things, and their thoughts have changed, and they're starting to see things differently, and now they are feeling differently and acting differently. So all these concepts I will be sharing will not seem earth-shattering enough to make a big difference in your marriage. They really won't, but I can assure you that they do, because I've seen it time and time again. So this concept that it was probably the very first part of this work that I started to do. It was answering my desires. And the reason why I call my podcast counterintuitive is because, to me, if I answered my desires as a wife and mom, then I was being selfish and I was thinking of myself before others. And that's not what I was ever taught. I always was taught that family first, being a good spouse, a good mom, a good neighbor, like all those things were more important. And after 20 years of this, putting myself dead last and not answering any of my desires, I really, really was in a bad spot. So, what I learned is that very often my intolerance for my spouse was directly related to my lack of self care, my lack of answering my own desires in my life. And what I've come to believe is that the desires that we are given, that we're constantly pushing down and saying it costs too much, or it takes too much time, or it would take away from all the more important things in my life, that as we continue to push them down and we don't give them any airtime in our lives or in our brains, that they are God given. Those desires are God given. And then we don't answer them. We start to feel resentment and anger and intolerance creep in. And so I really think that, especially, and I'm not going to try to generalize too much because people get really mad about this, but I feel like women, when they get snappy and annoyed at dumb things, very often it's lack of self-care that is at the core. And for men, often it's lack of physical intimacy or contact with their spouse. I feel like often they are grumpy and grouchy, and that is often what it is. But we're all different. And so I'm not saying across the board that this is how it is, but I would take a look at your own life and see if this doesn't ring true to you, because for a lot of people, this rings true to them. So let me tell you about all my debacles in my marriage so that you can hopefully not have to do the exact same things that I did. So when my husband was in medical school, his brother was in medical school the exact same time that he was. So they would go to school all day, and then at night they would study together the medical school concepts that they had learned that day. And I just remember this one night that they were playing, or they were studying. And I was waiting up for my husband because it usually looks like I didn't see him pretty much at all. And it would just be like home for dinner. And then he just had to concentrate on this difficult, career that he'd chosen. So what happened was I called my sister-in-law, and they'd been studying and it was getting really late and I was tired and I wanted to go to bed. And I was like, do you know how much longer they're going to be? And she was like, oh, they are playing video games right now. And my anger shot from like 0 to 1,000 right then, because I had all this brain drama and I made it mean. I often ask myself now, what am I making this mean? And what I made it mean was he didn't care as much about me as I cared about him. He didn't care to spend time with me. Um, he wasn't invested in our relationship, like all these things, right? And of course, it wasn't those things, but that's what my brain told me. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And so when he got home, he heard it, right? And I was like, never do that again. Like, we're both sacrificing. And when you're done studying, I want to spend time with you. I never get to see you. You spend time every day with him in school, like all the things. And I was totally justified and I was right. And of course, because I always am. And you know what? He never did ever play video games again that I know of with his brother after studying. And what I've come to realize is that the video games weren't the problem. They weren't the problem. That's what I thought was the problem. If he was just changed, like I'm always telling you in this podcast, if he would change, I would feel better. But guess what? I needed to do some self care. If I had said, I need an hour or 15 minutes or a half hour when you get home from medical school to just do something I wanted to do and answer a desire, maybe go, somewhere with a friend without kids, like that kind of thing, anything. But I would always make up excuses like we don't have any money, so we can't do anything I want to do, or we don't have any time, or he needs to study, all these things, right? I'd make all these justifications, but then I would start to feel resentful, which came out when I figured out he was playing video games. But if I had been able to allow myself to do something for me for a little bit each day, then when he was doing something for him with he and his brother, it wouldn't have been any big deal. And so for so many years, I held on to this. You have to work hard. I have to work hard. We have to get these things done. We have to do all the drudgery, but when it comes to really caring about myself and my needs, that has to be put on the back burner. So that was the first thing that I really messed up on, but I thought I'd done right. Okay. And then the next one was, it was after we were out of medical school and my husband had a real job now. We were making some money and we were in a different situation. But I was intent, and we were both intent on getting out of our medical school debt. We had gotten, $250,000 in debt through this process of being in medical school for 4 years, my husband not working, me having kids and being at home. And so we were very, very, like we had a huge goal to just get out of our student loan debt as quick as we could and just get that weight off of us. And so we did it. We were like every spare penny that we made, we would put straight towards our medical school debt. And once again, like really nothing as far as self-care and doing things we want to do with the money or anything like that. And so at one point, I don't even know if he asked me or we got in a huge fight and he asked me and he did it. But anyway, he spent like a ton of money on this car that he had found on the classified ads. And it was this car that he wanted to like redo. It was like, I think a 67 or a 69 Camaro. And he's like, I'm never going to be able to find this again. I have to buy it right now. Anyway, he bought it and I was furious. I'm like, we just spent all this money we should be putting towards debt into this car that doesn't even move. Like it can't even drive. And for my like first female brain, I'm like, why the heck do we need a car that doesn't even move? And then also just this isn't our goal. I'm sitting here clipping coupons. I'm giving up everything so that we can pay off this debt. And you just spent all this money on this car. And I think that's about the time that we decided to both give ourselves personal money that we get to spend on what we want. And so that I wouldn't feel so resentful when he bought anything because I was so like laser focused on debt, like getting rid of debt. And so then we started having personal money so that we didn't have to answer to each other for. And that helped a lot with the contention or resentment around that. But this car was way beyond like any personal money for sure. And the only thing that made me feel better was you have to give me that same amount of money and I get to spend it however I want, whatever he spent on the car. And that was kind of how I was able to wrap my head around this purchase that we'd made. But I think my husband really, he was just better at self-care. He was better at knowing what he wanted to do and wanting to enjoy life and not just have it be duty, responsibility, And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's kind of my mindset, is that it was back then, was that I have to do everything that's responsible, my duty, and everything was basically looked like that in my life. I didn't have as much enjoyment as I could have had, and I wasted so many years. So I hope that I will be able to talk you into this concept because it changed my life. So this is what Jesus told us. He gave us this first great commandment, which is to love God with all thy heart and basically obey him, follow him, choose his way, things like that. And then the next commandment is like unto it, and it's love thy neighbor as thyself. And this kind of just assumes that we love ourselves, which many of us don't. And it has everything to do with whether or not we can love others, including our spouses. So if you can start thinking, just experiment with this, how can I make this more fun? My life, my marriage, my work, anything that is just total drudgery for you, how can I make it more fun? And allowing yourself to become aware of what it even is, because I was so used to pushing it all down and saying, not the right time, can't do it, not enough money, that I had no idea who I was anymore. And I think it was a huge part of the reason why I was so miserable. And I also thought it was my husband's like job to fix my misery. And funny thing is, if you don't even know what you need, how the heck is your spouse supposed to know what you need? It's near impossible. So you have to start becoming aware of what you even want, what would make you happy, what would light you up. And then you can become way more pleasable to your spouse and you can figure out what that is. And then you can start to be more happy, which is your job anyway. Your job is to make yourself happy, not your spouse's job. So let me tell you a little bit about what I finally came to when my marriage was just in the toilet. And what I came to was, what would light me up was I had wanted forever to take like a master gardener class. I thought that would be really fun. But whenever I was gone, the only time I'd ever been gone during the evenings was for my church work with the youth of our church. I spent many, many weekend evenings with them. And I thought that was okay because it was for God, right? I was putting God first. And so it was okay that I was spending time with these youth and helping them and spending time with them to come closer to God. But I had never given myself a night off to do something I wanted to do. So this master gardener class that I decided at the last minute to do, it was a couple, maybe 2 or 3 hours every evening, once a week. And I was kind of ready for the kickback from my husband when I was like, I want to do this thing. I want to take this class and I'll be gone for, 3 hours a night, one day a week. And he was totally open to it. And I enjoyed it so much. I had this huge, thick binder and I would study it all day. And I started to get really into this. Like, I could not wait. So I think part of it is first we need to just give in and be okay with liking something and wanting to do something. And then most of us have to learn it because we don't even know what this looks like to do. And then this is the fun part. You want to do things that you are creating instead of consuming. So I wanted to create plants. I wanted to make seedlings. So we set up these two huge, and my husband helped me with all of this. And it's where we started to heal because I set up these two huge shelves with little seedlings of 48. And I literally that first year, I grew 2,000 seedlings. And I cannot tell you how much joy I had watching those little seeds come up and labeling them and trying to and figuring out what they were going to look like that summer as they grew in my garden. And it lit me up. You guys, I got so excited about this that the problems in my marriage really did start to be minimal compared just doing this thing of like doing what I want and just spending time answering my desires and learning something new and creating. This changed a lot for me. And because I was having such a hard time in my marriage and being a mom in general, like all of it, I had to constantly remind myself, people before plants. I know that sounds so ridiculous, but you have no idea how awesome it was to have a passion, have something I actually cared about that was bringing me joy and happiness in my life. It was really how I started to heal. And I thought this was so selfish. Like, I am taking care of plants and growing plants instead of all these things I should be doing, cleaning the house, making dinner, playing a game with the kids. But the thing is, the kids started to come upstairs where I was growing these plants, and they started to help me and water them and enjoy it. And it started to become fun for them too. And so I love growing flowers, especially, and I love making bouquets. So what started as something really selfish that I was like, I'm doing this for me and I don't care what anyone says or thinks, right? That's really where my mindset was. I started to grow these beautiful flowers, and I started to make bouquets and give them to people in my life who were having a hard time, or I thought they could use a pick me up. And this turned into a whole nonprofit organization that we've given away over 3,000 bouquets of flowers to care homes and Meals on Wheels and hospitals and so many organizations to just brighten people's lives. It's called Brightening Blooms. And I felt so much joy in and satisfaction in sharing these flowers with others. And it became this thing that blessed so many other lives than mine. We have so many volunteers who have helped with this. And I could never have given away 3,000 bouquets of flowers without so many people, other people who helped. So as I've learned to answer my desires, I realized that my desires are God-given and God-driven, and they help me contribute to many and bless lives. And I feel like a way greater sense of well-being. And this adds to the overall happiness in my marriage and home. So what desire are you going to give yourself permission to explore starting today? And I put this out online in my Facebook group, and Aggie Peck, this really cute girl who just moved to our country and got married here, she said, for me, sometimes it feels bad to desire going back home to my family because I have a life here. And she said, your post helped me to realize that it's not selfish as a feeling as I thought. I will desire to go home so that when I do, my joy is even greater. Don't you just love that? Like, she's found that instead of feeling misery about her missing home, she's going to start feeling joy about when it happens, because she's going to give in to her desire to want to be home sometimes, to be with her family. Another really good one, if you're struggling, if you're in such a bad spot as I was, if you cannot think of anything that you think would make you happy right now, I would love for you to go back to your childhood and think about what made you so happy when you were a kid, because then life was less complicated and it was easier, and you didn't have all the adulting that you're doing right now. And I went back to that also, and I started thinking about what were my best memories of growing up. And I figured out that every year my parents, we bred dogs and we had puppies. And that was the joy of my summer. I absolutely loved playing with puppies. And so that was a desire that I finally decided to realize, even though I was like, no, I have kids and they're already too hard. It's too much work, sacrifice money, right? Don't let work, sacrifice, and money hold you back from what you think would make you like up level your life and bring happiness to you, because I promise it will bring happiness to your family. This is another one that it blessed way more than me. First, we got the dog, a purebred dog that I really wanted, a certain breed. I looked forever for the right one, which one I wanted. And then got the puppy, trained the puppy, did all those things. The puppy gets old enough to finally breed, then we have to find the breeder. But I did it, you guys. I've bred 2 different litters of puppies, and my family has been so on board. We have loved every single bit of it. So much fun. Now, yours may not be this. The ladies that I've coached and men, it has been so awesome to just see them light up with different things. One man, it was like my husband, it was working on an old car, refinishing it, redoing it, whatever you call it. I don't know. You guys out there know. The next one was going fishing. And he said, then he'd feel bad because then his wife was stuck at home again. And I'd say, well, then you go fishing, whatever amount of time you spend fishing or that day, let her have a day. Like, let her answer her desires. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do something that you would like make you so filled because you have to feel guilty, because that's when the resentment creeps into the marriage. That's when you're like, what am I doing? Like, this was not supposed to look like this. Okay. So another one, she started riding horses again. And another one, she started crafting, allowing herself time to craft. Another one, started taking classes. Once again, it's almost always creation. You want to be doing something, because consuming, it's not as rewarding. So if you can think of things where you're creating something or you're learning something new, I think those are the best ones that will probably give you the most for your time, money, effort, right? And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up not letting money, work, and sacrifice be a big, huge roadblock in my happiness anymore. And if you really do start taking the control of your own happiness and believing that you're in charge of whether you're happy, you're in charge of whether you're sad or angry too. And so that starts to switch in your brain. It'll just start to be this thing where you can start to figure out how to slowly shift your marriage into a whole different experience for you and your spouse. So anyway, what is your job? Okay, your job is to make sure that you even make a list. It would be super awesome to just start becoming aware of your desires. And when you're feeling really intolerant in certain ways in your life, especially towards your spouse, you need self-care. And that doesn't have to look like going to a class for 3 hours a week either. It can look like going out and laying in the sunshine for 10 minutes. Go on a walk and listen to your favorite podcast or music. These are some of my favorite. I mean, just start writing a list of like, what would be self-care for me? What would help me today? When my husband comes home or my wife comes home from work, what would help me be in a better spot to greet them with a happier attitude and mentality? And those things will start to make a difference. So if this is helping you, if you are enjoying this podcast, please like it and subscribe and share it with others. And if you think of someone while you're listening and you think this might be something that would help, please send it on to them. That's why I'm here. And I would just love for you to contact me anytime at charlotteshieldscoaching.com. That's my website. And just be ready. Be ready for a shift, because guess what? We are all seeking and expecting miracles, and they happen. I see it over and over again. Pray and ask Heavenly Father to help you to know what direction will help you. And hopefully this is just one tool, but I'm going to keep giving you so many more that will start to change and start to really, really make a difference. All right. See you next time, guys.